guess you all know, you are all very familiar with Bordeaux wines. I guess many of you drink it every day. But I'm not sure how many of you have been to China this year. How many of you been to China? Wow, that wasn't many. The development in China, which we have also been presented today, is growing very fast. The economy is growing very fast. And when you go on the streets in China, and you ask anybody on the streets, you ask them, what is your ambition in life? They say, to get rich. You ask the same question on the street in France. They say, to have more holiday. So it's a little bit different aspects of why the economies are growing slightly different. So the thing about China is something, and I'm sure all of you wonder why your favorite chateaus or Bordeaux keeps on increasing in price. And that is not only about, that's not just because of China, it's also because of strict production I mean, it's a supply and demand ratio. I just want to take you a little bit back in time, because when I started I'm from Norway. I started a wine agency company there back in 1992. And when I started that company, Bordeaux wasn't very fashionable. Bordeaux was actually a bit gray old town, southwest in France. And in the wine industry in the world at that time, what was exciting was the new world. It was South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, California, Chile, and Argentina. And I started with those wines. But starting to build a portfolio of producers, I also started to get quotes and rates from the Bordeaux marketplace. And what was very frustrating when you deal with a wine monopoly, as in Norway, was that each time I called my merchant in Bordeaux to buy more of the wine I secured a listing, the price had gone up. And I was very frustrated when you have secured a listing and the monopoly don't allow you to increase prices more than 3 times a year. So what I did, this was I started my business in 92, 96. I decided to go to Bordeaux and find out what is actually happening. I was a very poor merchant. I was a one-man show, and this was the car I could afford to rent. And I drove up the majestic D2 in Bordeaux, the chateau route. I passed all the great chateaus, and I ended up here. I drove up the driveway to Chateau Margaux, and I said to myself, one day, I'm going to trade those wines. I had absolutely no allocations. I had no connections, no network. And this is how it started back in 1996 when I went to Margaux. Strange to think of today, 15 years later, that we actually, I think we are probably the largest distributors of the wines of Chateau Margaux. But today, I'm going to take you a little bit, give you a little bit of background of the Bordeaux marketplace and how it works. This gentleman is very, very important. He's not my grandfather. He's actually Napoleon III. And in 1855, he requested from the Bordeaux marketplace to classify the chateaus. Because in Bordeaux, I tell you, we have about 8,000 chateaus. So it's very confusing if you don't understand which one is good, which one is not. So this is the copy of the first classification in 1855. And I'm sure many of you recognize the first one on the list, which is Lafite, and which is Lafite Rothschild. There's another one on the list, which is also a Rothschild, and this is Mouton, which at that time was classified as a second growth. But this classification helped the market of Bordeaux wine to really understand who has the exceptional terroir, because Bordeaux is very unique. The combination of soil, temperatures, sun, rain, and wind is something you cannot copy. You can plant vineyards all over the world, but that microclimate of Bordeaux can never be copied. And this is the reason why the Bordeaux wines remains unchallenged in the world, in terms of fame, in terms of quality, and in terms of volume. So this classification started this whole thing. And in in the Bordeaux marketplace, there are two big markets. Bordeaux, which is a beautiful city, this is where the wines are produced. None of the top chateaus of Bordeaux have their own distribution networks in place. All the wines are produced by the chateaus. They are sold into the Bordeaux marketplace, and there are about 400 wine merchants who distribute these wines around the world. All this is based on network allocations, and it gives a very, in today's world, it gives a very unbalanced distribution system. Because since the last 150 years, the London marketplace is actually the marketplace that dominates the trade of Bordeaux wine. But the difference, and this is what I'm going to talk about today, is how these two places differ in terms of quality and the provenance of the wines that are traded. In Bordeaux, all the wines come direct from the chateaus, and they end up in the London marketplace. And this is an advertisement from the largest wine merchant in London. It's called Five Vintners, and it's very clear how they source their wines. This advertisement is from Financial Times, and they actually asked you, as private collectors, to sell their wines to them. We, Bordeaux Wine Bank, deal differently like this. We only purchase wines that comes direct from the chateaus. The problem in the marketplace today, because of Bordeaux and London, is that the Bordeaux negociants distribute the Bordeaux wines around the world, and the merchants around the world starts buying from each other, buying from auctions, buying from private collectors, and it gives a very unfair and not very transparent system of trading. You can go to 10 different wine shops around the world. You buy exactly the same chateau and the same vintage, and you'll get 10 different qualities because the way the wines has been traveling around the world. So, coming to provenance, how we are, Bordeaux Wine Bank, how we are now changing this market, is that we are protecting and we are storing every single case we buy direct from the chateaus in Bordeaux, and we store them in Bordeaux. They never leave Bordeaux until they are sold off to a private collector. What is important about Bordeaux, or important about wine, is they must be sold in an original wooden case, because wine is fragile, and for private collectors like yourself, the aspect of an original case is very important, because there are a lot of gangsters out there, there are frauders, there are fake wines in the market, and there are wines that has been repacked in cases like this and sold as an original wooden case. So what we do, we have developed this system called five-star provenance. We seal, when the cases come from the chateau, they are checked and controlled, and they are sealed with 4 stickers, so you cannot open the case anyway, to make sure that they are well protected for the future. Because what is important about wine is what's inside the case. And this is what we try to protect. These wines are fragile. They don't take travel very well. They don't take temperature changes very well. And this is the reason why we have come up with this certification system of wine. So wine is fragile. Wine must be handled with care. And whichever wine you like to buy from whoever retailer you know, always ask them what is the provenance of the wine, where does your wine come from. We have distribution of fine wine is not easy because of the lack of transparency, the lack of availability. And we have in place a very detailed auction program with Sotheby's, who embraced this business model of provenance very, very early. And we have done so far 3 auctions with them. New York in November last year, we did Hong Kong in January, and we did London 2 weeks ago. Sotheby's and Christie's are 2 very serious auction houses, and as an example, Christie's now rejects 70 of wines offered to them for auctions because of uncertainty of provenance. They have embraced our program, and our good friend Serena Sutcliffe, which is the grand dame of wine in the world, she tells this very simply. It's simply the best. And this is how they market the wines that is auctioned off, because auction or buyers knows that this wine is in perfect quality. And this is the most important slide. We don't talk much about return on investments in today's presentation. What we are talking about is how these two markets, the London market and the Bordeaux market, are developing. Let's start here. Chateau Margaux, 2000, just turned 10 years plus. When this wine was launched, okay, we are back in April '06, we were launched in en primeur in June, July 2001. The price purchased by the people in London and people like ourselves was the same. Then you can see how the market prices are developing. And you can see how the red dots are sales done. This graph, by the way, is from a portal called Livex. It's a graph. It's and wine exchange in London, and the red dots are sales that they have done on their graph on their portal, and the green dots are auction prices, because most of the top wines of Bordeaux, especially the first growth now, are auctioned off by the top auction houses. And you can see here how the prices are developing. Our sales are up here because of our 5-star provenance program. There still been sales after we did our auctions down here at 600 euro versus 1,650 euro. And the reason for that is insecurity, I mean the aspects of not knowing the history of the wine. There is, of course, Chateau Margaux, this shows a very typical trend of a top Bordeaux wine. Many of you are familiar with this famous Chateau Lafite Rothschild, the 2000 vintage, which is just absolute fantastic. And you see the same trend here, starting here, dots, and you can 4,200 euro a bottle for Lafite 2000. In November last year, I was at the auction in Sotheby's in Hong Kong, and this wine didn't come from us, because our sales are here. This came direct from the Chateau. So Chateau sold off some stock by Sotheby's, and it was record prices, because people know the wine has never moved. The wine it cannot be better chance of getting the right quality when you buy direct from the Chateau. So this is the trends. It's the provenance is dividing the market. You must be very careful when you buy wines today. And I want to give you one more example of Lafite, because 1982 is another golden example how prices are developing and how that Lafite sale hit 8,000 euro a bottle because of guaranteed quality. This case is ours. That's the only case I have of Lafite 82. But what is very exciting about this case, and it's going for auction in Hong Kong in October, is this little sticker here. It says that this case was collected by us from the Chateau the 4th of June 2008 at 10:20 in the morning. That's how detailed the Chateaus now are in recording. You can also see this band. This is set by Lafite. And so this case, in 1982, 6 bottles will go for auctions in Hong Kong in October this year. Very, very important how now the Chateaus are protecting their brands and how we help them to secure their future. Wine is the new luxury. And this is where we come to China again, the hunger for becoming rich and the hunger of lifestyle products, luxury goods. We've seen a big trend in China. The ladies are buying the Hermes Birkin bags. the guys are buying their wine cellar. They're building wine cellars. And of course, they're buying sports cars. But wine has become now the new luxury in Asia. And of course, the reason for that, you take this beautiful bottle of Mouton Rothschild 2000, produced maybe 20,000 cases. That's all. This is the only product that diminishes every day because we drink them. We open them. Wine is to be enjoyed. We all love wine. But the Bordeaux wines needs time. They need 10 to 15 years for a first growth, for a top vintage to become really, really enjoyable. So during that time, that's where we come in to protect and secure the quality of these wines. So wine is the new luxury in Asia. And with new luxury comes also a new way of retailing. And this is how our company, Bordeaux Wine Bank, are now taking the lead in the market. We are opening new luxury wine boutiques. This is a shop that will open on the 30th of June this year in Taipei, in the Regent Hotel in Taipei. It's called Imperial, and it's something that Bordeaux Wine Bank is doing. This is going to be the new Tiffany style of luxury wine retail. And this is something that is never seen before, and this is the way the market is going. We have also opened a chain of wine galleries because wines are becoming expensive. Bordeaux Wine Bank deals with the top 50 chateaux of Bordeaux. And we want young consumers to have the chance to taste the wine before they buy it. Because again, it's becoming expensive. Maybe what was 20 euro before is now maybe 80, 100 euro. So it's nice to have a place to go to where you can discover these great wines because they are truly great. So we are opening these kind of galleries. This is the only place in the world where you can go in and taste the top 48 Bordeaux wines by the glass. This was #1 in Bordeaux. We have already opened one last week in Taiwan, which I just came back on Sunday from that opening. And it's very exciting how people now can taste. We are also arranging Bordeaux wine shows around the world because we think it's important that the consumers out there have a chance to meet the owners, talk to the owners, and learn more about how the Bordeaux wines are produced and made. This is how the focus on our market is. Of course, there's a little dot here now called Luxembourg, where we have just set up our head office. But the core, the center, the heart of our business is in Bordeaux. And the distribution is very central by Asia. We have had an office in Singapore since 2003. We just opened an office in Taiwan. We opened Japan recently. And we're also opening Beijing and Shanghai this year. We are looking for partners now in Moscow, and we are developing also Korea and later also India. But back to China, the interest for wine among the Chinese is increasing every day. This picture is from a tasting done by the Union de Grand Cru in a town in China called Guangzhou last year. And these are 1,000 wine professionals. These are not public. These are wine professionals. These are people who work in restaurants, who work in hotels, and who deal with wine every day. And they are here to meet 100 chateaux to learn what's going on in Bordeaux. And I just want to share this with you because it comes down to why we are doing this and why we find this so exciting, because the returns can be very good. If you look at the bottle of wine, again, a very famous chateau. I'm talking about Grand Cru Classé. Margins as a producer from 250 to 5,000%. I think these guys have more. Then you have the chateau produce the wine. There's a courtier in Bordeaux that brokers the deals between chateau and negociant. And he takes 2%, which we allow him to do. So I put this in red because this is not a market we are very interested in. We're interested in this market. We are a negotiant in Bordeaux, so we have this margin. We have wholesale operations now in Norway, Singapore, Taiwan, China, and Japan. And we are coming up with retail outlets that will take the last part of the margin growth that we see. So, how can you buy wine? How do you buy wines with 5-star provenance? There are different ways. This is one way. We have a wine portal called Bordeaux Provenance, which is branded by us. And this is, from here, we have something we call private collector services. So we will help you to identify the wines you like. You tell us what chateau you like. We call the chateau to see if we don't have the stock. We call the chateau to see if they have the stock, and we sell it to you. You choose, store it in Bordeaux or have it shipped to wherever you live. There is a wine investment fund available, also from Bordeaux Wine Bank, listed here in Luxembourg. So there's ways to invest in wine. Currently, we have about 80 million euro under management in Bordeaux Wine Bank, and part of this is in Wine Growth Fund, which is done by us. Next, under Wine Growth Fund, we are setting up now, launching very soon, something called a Chateau and Vineyards Fund. Because you saw the list of the margins, we believe the future for us as a distributor is also to have ownership of these great properties. Because again, they are limited, they are few, and the interest is very, very strong. And again, the combination of soil, temperatures, wind, sun cannot be copied anywhere around the world. So we are negotiating now to buy the first chateau in Bordeaux. So, coming to an end, we believe the future is red. We believe China is very important for the Bordeaux marketplace. We believe Bordeaux cannot be conquered. We believe Bordeaux is very, very unique. And this is the reason why we have developed a company like Bordeaux Wine Bank. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you very much. Can you delve a little more in detail into what makes your model unique? You're not a merchant, but you do sell wine to individuals. Is the uniqueness of your model in the fact that you store wine for a while before releasing it?
Yes, the uniqueness of our business model is that we don't buy and sell from anybody else than the chateaus. We buy the wines direct from the chateaus. We store them for 5-10 years, and then we release them on the market. All the other players in the marketplace, they buy and sell from each other. Far Vintners, as an example, in London, they may source wine from US, they may source wine from Hong Kong, they may source wine from Bordeaux. But if they call the Bordeaux brokers or the Bordeaux merchants, the price difference will be significant. Because the Bordeaux market is built up on a tranche system. I mean, the chateaus, this is a very good example. 10 years ago, when the chateau released the wine on the market, they probably released 80% of their production. Today, and I've been picking up wines during this conference today, the 2010 vintage has just come on the market. The chateaus may release 10%, maybe 20%. The rest, they will spread out over 10 years. We will keep on buying from the chateaus, but the price will go up and up and up and up because there's tranche 1, tranche 2, tranche 3. But the traders around the world, they will find those prices too high, so they will rather source from a private person, go to an auction, or from any other merchants around the world. So our uniqueness is that we guarantee every single bottle that we sell. And we have about 10,000 cases now in stock, which are all pristine quality.
Thank you. Could you please share with us your views on how climate change may impact Bordeaux wines from an investment standpoint?
Climate change is a very serious issue. And we have seen recently, I'm sure many of you remember years ago, You may have tried some wines from the 70s or even the 90s, 91, 92, 93, 94, 97, even 2002, 2007, difficult vintages. And why? Because in Bordeaux has very, very complex climate. I'm sure if you have been to Bordeaux in the wintertime, it's not very pleasant because it rains all the time. But that rain is very, very important. The problem in Bordeaux, which we have seen, and in the past, was that we had lesser top vintages and more average vintages. And the reason for that was that it wasn't warm enough to ripen the grapes fully before they were harvested, before the autumn rain started. So current climate change, 1 to 2 degrees average is actually quite good for Bordeaux. But there's a challenge how to handle that high sugar level and that high alcohol. And that's what you have seen in some of the recent vintages in Bordeaux, that the alcohol is also rising. But if it stays within 1 to 2 degrees, I'm not too concerned. But if it keeps on, I don't know over how many years, then it may be a problem, and we may have to change the grape varieties. Maybe we need to start planting some Syrah instead of Merlot, because the Merlot ripens very quickly and gets very high alcohol in today's climate.
Henning, thank you very much for the very interesting speech. Do you think that as you move into the chateau business, that creates a conflict of interest for you as a merchant?
No, because the chateaus are changing their distribution policy. The chateaus need us because we are developing the most luxury retail program in the world, but because they have limited supply. Say an example like Lafite or Muteau or Margaux, they have maybe 13,000, 15,000 cases per vintage. It's not enough for us to be a strong player, and we think we can be complementary. We deal with about 50 chateaux in our portfolio, and our objective of starting to acquire chateaux, to buy chateaux, is to build up maybe a portfolio of 5. So to have 1 Saint-Emilion, 1 Pomerol, maybe 1 Sauternes, Saint-Julien, and maybe one day Chateau Margaux. A chateau in Margaux, sorry.
Hello. I was wondering whether you found the same interest in Asia for champagne, and if so, whether your model could be used eventually for such a product.
Can you please repeat?
I was wondering whether you found the same interest in Asia for champagne, champagne, and if so, if your model could be used eventually for such a product.
Yes, I think so. When people say that, is wine a bubble? I say the only bubbles we have in the wine business is in champagne. But every wine meal we have, when we see clients, we always start with champagne. Champagne is a very important product to us as well, and we're actually negotiating to buy over a champagne house. You may know Louis Vuitton Group is the world's largest champagne producer, and the difference between the champagne market and the Bordeaux market is that all the champagne producers, they have their exclusive distributors around the world. None of the chateaus have an exclusive distributor. They have 5, 10, 15, 20, even 30, 40 wine merchants in Bordeaux, which distributes their wines around the world. You can ask a chateau owner, hey, I'm going to Korea. Where can I find my wine? He says, I have no idea. Because I don't sell my wine. I produce my wine, but I don't sell it. So I think, again, in the future, I think the chateaus may start to change their distribution model. But currently, Bordeaux is the only wine region in France that operates like it does today. But I think we are also slowly entering the champagne market, because the champagne market is also very, very important. But the core for us is Bordeaux.
Hi, I have a question regarding the price of the Premier Grand Cru.
Yeah.
They have about tripled in the past 4 years. I'm sure you're part of those buyers?
Not at all.
Not at all, okay. I have read a recommendation from Parker regarding the 2010 millésime, And he says that we should not rise too much the price of the Premier Grand Cru, and says that there's maybe a bit too much speculation now on the prices.
Yeah.
What is your view on that?
That's I heard that article was out in the paper today or yesterday here in Belgium, and it's a very good article. We are big admirers of Robert Parker. I think he is no doubt the world's best wine taster. I think what he talks about, because his publication is called The Wine Advocate, and he is the advocate for the consumers. And I think he speaks a lot also for the American consumers, which have kind of lost out a bit in the race of the top Bordeaux wines. Not only are they increasing very fast in price, but the currencies, the US dollar versus euro, don't help on the situation. But the key element of prices that is rising is actually the change of the distribution strategy of the chateaus. Before, they released 80% en primeur, they kept 20% for the future. Now they have reversed it. They'll put 20% on the market and keep 80% for the future. And they will spread that out over the next probably 10 years or so before they run empty over top vintage. That is causing a very unbalance in terms of supply and demand. When the Bordeaux market, say 10, 15 years ago, it was more Europe, US, and a little bit in Japan. That was the market for the top Bordeaux wines. Now you have the whole of Asia, you have Russia, you have India, you have, of course, we still have Europe, UK, and the US. And it's a huge demand for these wines, but the chateaus are putting out 20% or 1/5 of what they did before. So it's causing a very unbalance of supply and demand. And this is the reason why the prices are going up so quickly. So I think Robert Parker has a duty to express this, but he is not really in line with the market. The market is changing dramatically. The chateaus are changing the market. And as consumers, we just have to learn to live with it. And that's why we have opened all these wine galleries, because we want people to come in and taste. Maybe you can't afford anymore to buy a Chateau Margaux, but you can afford a Chateau Palmer, which is next door, which produce fantastic wines as well. And you can buy a Léoville Barton instead of a Léoville Ascasse, instead of a Chateau Latour. So there's a lot of availability of top wines in Bordeaux, and this is. But for us consumers, unfortunately, we have to adopt and probably start buying wines that may be lesser known, but still great.
You indicated earlier that you have experience in the New World.
Yes.
I come from Stellenbosch, and we consider down there we are as good as Bordeaux, but unfortunately we're not as known. In your experience, do you think that your model could be extended to the New World in time? Obviously at a different price level and so on. I appreciate that.
I'm very grateful that you asked the questions. I started my wine business in Stellenbosch. I was there in 1992. I was invited, actually I was in the textile trade at that time. And I was invited by the Norwegian government, who have just set up embassy in Cape Town 2 weeks before I arrived. And by a mistake, I rented a car in the weekend and I ended up in Stellenbosch. And that's when I said to myself, oh wow, this product, I want to do it. So I started with introducing South African wines to Norway. That's how my business started. And the wines in South Africa, and I came back 2 years later, and I was invited to the Pinotage conference in Stellenbosch to see how I could help to develop the South African market. The climate in South Africa, I think, is absolutely perfect. I think the wines are great, and I think we are adopting to this becomes wines we drink on a daily basis. But what has happened in Bordeaux, because of this prestige, because of this greatness of the big chateaus, I mean, buildings and the old Dutch houses, and very charming in Stellenbosch. But Bordeaux is different, and I think again, the producers in South Africa, they have exclusive distributors around the world, and I think they're doing a fairly good job in terms of, many of you may know a Chateau Pichot Lalanne, Pichot Longueville Lalanne, in Pauillac. Madame Langstar, she sold this chateau 2 years ago to the Rothschild Champagne House, and she moved to Stellenbosch. So I think there's a lot of attractiveness in the South African wine industry, but I think they have to develop it a bit differently.
My question is, how representative are the prices that you've shown us of the whole vintage, like for 2000 Lafite? Isn't there a risk that one single case makes that is bid for, you know, emotional reasons, and one single case is setting the price for the whole for the whole vintage, and it does not correspond to reality?
No, because when you saw the graph, you saw a lot of dots. And a lot of dots is what makes up today's market. It makes up the secondary wine market, wine that is sold and traded, and which you have no guarantee of quality. You don't know where this wine comes from. You can go up, you can show up on the auction house and bid for that wine, but they never tell you where it's been. So these exceptions are those where provenance is guaranteed. And there are buyers out there who rather pay $2,000 for a bottle that they know what's inside than $1,000 for a bottle with uncertain quality. So, but you know, the thing about why Bordeaux wine has become so popular is that because from a production of about 15,000 cases over years, it goes down and down and down because we enjoy wine, we drink wines. So those top vintages becomes more and more rare. And to find wines with that perfect provenance becomes more and more difficult. That's why those few prices are exceptional, but they are not the norm. But it is what, if you are a collector, if you want to buy wines, if you want to buy Bordeaux wines, this is prices you can achieve. And I just wanted to show the difference between top provenance and unknown provenance.
Maybe we can take one last question, if there is.
There's a lot of interest for wine.
As an investor, you think wine is the investment or Bordeaux is the investment? Don't you think it's too narrow to focus only on one region? I mean, Burgundy, some of the rare Burgundies have had very, very expensive prices.
Of course.
And the New World also.
For us, we have tapped on a business opportunity because of two main reasons. The availability. I mean, I'm talking about, like I said, a top wine from a top chateau is produced in about 15,000 cases. That's very, very rare to produce so much wine of so great quality. Burgundy is much more different because over years, all these estates have been chopped up and divided between family members. And of course, Romanée-Conti is a fantastic, it's probably in the wine market today is probably the #1 wine brand that the most sought after. Why? Because a top DRC, Romanée-Conti, it's only produced about 500 cases. And this is why it becomes so expensive. And the top Burgundy wines are produced in very limited quantity. So we need to build a business that is built on volume. And this is the reason why we have focused on Bordeaux. The brands of Bordeaux are very strong, and they have high production.
Thank you for this exciting subject with a lot of questions.
I'm here. Thank you. Thank you.